Hi, everyone. I am here today with Melissa Perlman. But what's important about this conversation, if you are an entrepreneur or anybody who has a dream, something in your heart you really want to do, where you are right now, you're feeling empty, you're feeling unfulfilled. If you're in that place, you're going to want to listen to this conversation. Now, on the other side of that, if you're grinding on your dream, you're also going to want to listen to this conversation because there is so much value in Melissa's story and what she brings to the world. So, um, let me just tell you a little quick bit about her. She is the founder of Amansala, which is one of Tulum's most iconic boutique hotels and wellness retreat destinations. So if you're thinking about you need a little time out, that's where you're going to want to go. But what you need to know is that she grew this little idea, this little dream into a multi-million dollar hospitality brand. And it's rooted in her authenticity, which is such on brand for Be the Wolf. You guys all know that, and you're going to feel it coming from her. So, Melissa, can you give us just a little quick, before we dive into your story, just a quick little rundown about why building this business was so important to you?
Well, you don't always know it when you're in it.
Yeah.
It's like something that drives you. And I just came up with this idea based on what I would want as a consumer or as a client or as a traveler. And I thought, well, why wouldn't other people like this? And it just sort of consumed me. And I just thought, I'm just going to go for it. And it wasn't money driven, it was really purpose driven. And as a side note, it became a great business. But it was the first time as an entrepreneur where I didn't really look at the numbers. I just looked at the goal of getting this place up and running and envisioning all these people coming and just went for it.
Okay. So, what's really cool about that, and I talk a lot about this with my clients, is that there's this place of building a business from safety, looking for security, looking for stability, looking for when I have that $1 million payout or, multi-million dollar payout, then I will be able to have the freedom that I want. And what I love about your business, this one anyway, is that you just built from the heart. You built what you wanted to create, what you wanted to experience. So, in that, you became a creator in your own life. And you didn't have to wait for the until when that so many entrepreneurs are waiting for.
Yeah. And not just entrepreneurs in life.
Yeah.
And even in my business, a lot of people come alone because they're waiting. When I have the right partner, I'm going to take a vacation to the beach and do yoga and eat healthy, or when I save X amount of money, or when whatever it is. And the when never comes. And it's like, why do tomorrow what you can do today?
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you started, one of the things that I found out about you is that you are actually working on a personal project, a guide of the world's best places to rejuvenate your mind, body, and spirit. And one of the things I want to chat about is following the breadcrumbs. And so I think that there is a path that will lead us to the thing that makes us the most fulfilled, and it starts with the things that you're interested in, those sparks of inspiration that hopefully, if you follow and take that little place of action, that little step of action, it'll lead to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So I think let's dive into your story. So you're working on this project, but you were living in New York and you were living a very different life than let's rejuvenate the mind, body, and spirit. I live in New York. It's like go, 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 go.
Well, it's really funny because I am super go, 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 go. So, a lot of people are like, when does she slow down? But I think you can be go, 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 and at the same time be very grounded and be very spiritual and be very in tune with your emotional well being.
Yeah.
And I lived in New York, but prior to New York, I had spent 7 years living in Tokyo when there, was that whole boom of Japan. So I was right out of college, wasn't sure what to do with my life. And I started reading about Japan, the superpower Japan, and everything going on in Japan. Had never studied Japanese. I hadn't even eaten sushi. And I bought a one-way ticket to Tokyo, and I wound up staying there almost 7 years. And because of the visa laws, I had to leave the country every 6 months. And so I started traveling by myself, which is something I'd never done. I didn't even know people did that. I grew up in Phoenix in a really normal kind of household. We'd go on summer vacations, but I didn't know anybody who went like to Southeast Asia alone.
Right.
And there I was, this Phoenix girl in Thailand alone and in places like that. And I came across all these people and I'd say, well, what do you do? Oh, I'm a traveler. I'm traveling. I'm like, oh, well, traveling, like that's a thing. It's not like I'm a doctor or I'm a student. I'm traveling. And as I traveled, I saw all these alternative lifestyles, and there's a lot of massage and there's a lot of natural healing and stuff like that that's now very popular, and it's all like buzzwords of wellness, but
Right.
that's just the way of life in a lot of parts of the world. And so I always loved that. I would go and take care of myself, which is basically a wellness vacation. So I'd leave Japan and I'd go to some remote island and I'd get massages and I'd see what their local remedies were, and I would eat their local food and talk to their local doctors, and I just became really interested in that world. And so I started doing that for 7 years. So I experienced the islands in Thailand and the Philippines and Bali and India and so on and so forth. And then 7 years came up, and I'm like, I don't really want to spend the rest of my life in Japan. So I think I'll go to New York. Everybody should live in New York for at least a year. That's what I'd been told. And I thought, yeah, it sounds like a good plan. So I moved to New York, and I didn't have a regular job because I was still between that Japanese. I sort of made a job consulting with businesses on how to do business in Japan. And but as I traveled and I came back to New York, I thought, you know what? I bet other people would like the type of places that I'd experience. And I came up with this idea to make a website where people could search for the best place to rejuvenate their mind, body, and spirit. But I was a little bit early in that world.
Mm.
Now people are all open to that, but go back 20 years ago, it was a little bit too out there and people didn't really understand. What do you mean a spiritual vacation?
I would have been there. I would have been one of the first.
You would have been one of the first clients.
But not everybody was, because I was always in my own journey. I was always searching for how to feel better, how to, it's like I didn't know that my nervous system was dysregulated and like all of that stuff. So I was always looking for transformation, looking for how to get to that next level of peace, really.
Yeah. And I found that in my travels. So I thought I'm going to find all these places that have all these amazing things to offer and put them into a database. And it was when the dot-com boom was booming.
Yeah.
And I tried to put that together, but I didn't really get it off the ground. And in the middle of it, 9/11 happened.
Hmm.
And I remember I had a designer coming over to help me because I didn't know how to put my branding in the right format, et cetera. And it was in the day of that appointment when I looked out my window and I saw all the smoke and turned on the news, and the world changed. And I was at an event where people were talking about what are they going to do next? And the whole world was reflecting on if they were doing something that they really wanted to be doing with their life. And
Yeah.
it was a very, very fragile time and a very vulnerable time. And I came home from a gathering, and people had been talking about escaping to their summer homes in the Hamptons or Connecticut, and I thought, I'm going to go to Tulum. And I'd been there on a vacation one time, loved it. It was just miles and miles of beautiful beach that reminded me of those beaches I'd found in like Boracay in the Philippines, or before the islands in Thailand had been so discovered. And I thought, I'm going to go there and like just think about life. And I sort of formulated a retreat program, and I wrote it out that night coming home from this party and made a homemade website with the same verbiage that I still have to this day, creating a vacation with a purpose that will send you home looking and feeling better than when you arrived, through a combination of yoga, exercise, beachside pampering, and like minded people. And so I just had this vision and I wrote it out. And I think writing things out is so important
Yeah.
because it's the first step to becoming real is when you actually write it out. It's very different than when it's just in your head. You've
Yeah.
actually taken your first step. And when
Yeah.
you take your first step, the next ones start to just follow. And so I
Yeah.
took the first step.
It's a funny thing about writing down your vision, writing down your goals is just by the act of writing it down makes it 42% more likely to
Mhm.
happen, which is it's weird that I know that statistic, but
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
but just that thing that you did and you had this spark of inspiration and you did what so many people do not do is they have the spark of inspiration, they're at a party, they have this idea and they just let it fall flat and you took an action and that because those sparks, I think those sparks of inspiration are like divine.
They're downloads.
Yeah, they're
You need to be open to
They're
receive the download.
divine
And
instructions, really.
yes, I had my mother was very much into Tibetan Buddhism.
Yeah.
And we had, I don't know if you know what a Rinpoche is, but it's
Mm-mm.
a monk that's been reincarnated as a previous teacher, and they're called Rinpoches. So we had a Rinpoche that lived with us, and we used to have dinner talk that was quite interesting in our house. And he used to say that if we lead by the heart and not by the head,
Yeah.
that it's a much purer way to lead because you can talk yourself out of things when you say, well, I don't know, and this could happen and that could happen. But when you get this spark of inspiration that excites you, and you know when they are, it's something very personal, but when you're like, I have a great idea. And then you want to talk about it with everybody and get their opinions. And everybody who gives their opinion who didn't have the spark is going to talk you out of it. So it's
Exactly.
really important that when you get a spark and you're like, that's a good idea and I know it, trust your gut
Yeah.
and do it because you're your best cheerleader, you're your best guide. And the more you discuss it with other people, the more probability, I don't have the percentage, but I'm going to say 67% of people that don't just do it and they ask other people's approval or opinion,
Yeah.
they lose it. And then the spark passes and you lose it.
Yep. I have a question for you. So I know for me, the truth, like the true ideas. And for people who are in a little bit of a chaos and they're people who typically ask people's advice, some they might not be able to distinguish between what's just an idea versus that spark of inspiration. But for me, I know because I don't need to talk about it. Like when I was going to made the decision to move to New York, I didn't tell anybody for 8 months because there was no need to, because it was just the truth and it was the right thing for me. So I'm curious for you, how do you know when that spark of inspiration is the truth? Like it's one of the divine downloads.
I think it's something that you just know. It's not like it doesn't require like a checkbox. Like, oh, do I think this is a good? It requires you to just be in tune with yourself and be like, yes, this is exactly what I need to do. It's like when you know a relationship is ending,
Yeah.
you don't have to ask people. Up to here, I'm done. This isn't serving my higher purpose anymore. Or when you see a house that you love and you're like, this is where I want to live. Like there's certain things that you just know, and you have to just learn to trust when you know. It's also like business deals sometimes come up, like an opportunity. And if dilly dally on them, they're not there anymore. There's some decisions that you have to just trust yourself. And the more you do that, the more you gain confidence in your decisions. And it's easier to trust yourself on the next thing and the next thing. If you think about an actor playing a role, when they get into their character, they probably don't say to other people, do you think I'm playing it good? Like it just comes from inside of them and they're like, this is what I'm doing. I feel that way when I get a good idea about something. And that's what I love about being the CEO, the founder. There's good and bad about being an entrepreneur where you're running the show and you're calling the shots. Sometimes it's good to have a board of directors or people that you can get a more experienced advice from. But when you get a spark and you know it's the right thing, you can just make the change and do it.
Yep. And you said something really important is you talked about trust and trusting yourself. I think as an entrepreneur is the most important skill. So for those of you who are listening that you're feeling indecisive and really unsure and you really waffle back and forth and you can't really distinguish what's that divine spark and what's not, that's something you want to look at so that you can figure out how can you really fully trust yourself, because as we go deeper into your story, you're going to see how important that trust really is to actually creating the life that is meant for you, the life that is full of all the things that you want that you couldn't even probably even name right now.
Yeah. And also, sometimes you can start an exercise where you trust yourself in small decisions. And a lot of times people, they wobble back and forth on little decisions like what to have for dinner. Should I go here for this vacation? Should I not? Like all sorts of little decisions. And instead of trusting their gut and just doing what they, in the end, probably after back and forth, they do what they originally thought to do,
Yeah.
but they waste a lot of energy asking opinions, going back and forth, playing it in their head, mental energy. So an exercise is to take little decisions and own them. What's your gut telling you? What do you feel like doing your, and it's not a life or death decision, but just trusting your decision and starting to get comfortable making decisions. Sometimes people grow up or they maybe in their childhood they weren't allowed to make decisions. So as an adult, they're like looking for approval or looking for somebody else to give them like, yeah, do it. So the more they start with baby steps, if you're having trouble as an entrepreneur trusting yourself, start with little decisions and they get more comfortable and then you just build up.
Yes. 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 Great advice. Okay. So you went to Tulum after 9/11 and
So I go home from this party. I make a website with a homemade software that I don't even think is on the market anymore called Dreamweaver. And I have this sort of download of what I want to create and I write it on the website and I start packing up my apartment. I had a studio apartment on the west side that had like a beautiful view all the way down to the towers. And I basically packed up my apartment, bought a one-way ticket, arrived to Tulum, checked into took like a chicken bus. Back then they had like the buses like in a movie. I
yeah.
remember I was into like recording tapes back then, like mixed tapes. So I said, well, will you play my tape? So I have my music playing on the bus, um, dragged big size, body size duffel bags down with all kinds of pretty things that I thought I'd need to make a little pop up hotel. And checked into this resort, which was funny to say resort. It was like a set of kind of backpacker cabanas.
Yeah.
And it was late, and there was a guy sitting at the desk, and there was a little candle lighting up his face because they didn't have electricity. And I had my dictionary, a little red dictionary, and I was like, "Me apoyo, mi maletas," like, "Help me with the bags." And so the taxi opened up the back, and there were these huge bags, and everybody else had a backpack on, and the guy's kinda like, "Hmm." And we dragged the bags into the room. There were so many bags that it almost made a barricade, like, I had to jump over them to get out. And I was all jazzed up, and I woke up in the morning and I'm like, I'm going to walk and find a place that I can maybe partner with or do a pop up in, and just took off down the beach with my dictionary looking for a place to make this, resort that I'd built a website on and started looking. So that was like my first day.
Wow.
And I came across a few places, and there were a few, not a lot, like maybe a handful. And the first guy I went and I said, "Oh, I can redecorar and I can make more bonito and spruce it up." And the guy looked at me and said, "My wife just redecorated." And I was like, "Oh, it's very pretty. Thank you." They thought I was some kind of nut job. And then I kept walking and walking, and I wound up way down the beach. And I came across a group of hippies having a drum circle for somebody's birthday, and they invited me in. And yeah, so I spent a couple hours down there. And then I thought, okay, I better start walking back. So I'm walking back. And on the way back, it was almost dusk. And I saw a little light coming through these like overgrown coconut trees. And I walked back there and there was some music playing and there were some Mayan guys. and they had a palapa. If you know what that is, like a thatch roof hut that
Wow.
they make in the jungle. And that's how they build down there. And there's a palapa, but they were actually like, it was up on stilts. And then on the bottom section, they were cementing it in and making a room. And I walked in there and I looked around and I said, hola, when they all looked at me, they're like, hola. And I'm like, you need a ventana, you need a window. So I took a stick and I marked it on the wall. And they were like, okay. And they started to make a window. Now they gave me a beer, I got cement. And I'm like, they're kind of directing the crew. And then I'm like, where are you going to put the ropas for the vestidor, closet? And I point to a corner, like, okay. So they start building a closet. So now I'm like, this is going to be my place. I'm having an epiphany. Like, I found it. Wow, this old abandoned in 2 rooms, I'm going to like build into my place. And the owner showed up and he was like, who are you? And I said, well, who are you? And they're like, he's the jefe. He's Jose. And I said, oh, Jose. And I started negotiating with him, like, how much does one room cost? Because there was the one room upstairs, all dilapidated, no running water. And he told me, I think it was 300 pesos, which back then might have been, I don't even remember now, like $12 or something, maybe 15. And I'm like, but what if I rent it for a month? And what if I rent both rooms? And I started to sort of feel him out. And then next thing you know, we negotiated on a napkin, a contract. And that was my first hotel.
What I love about this is your propensity to just jump in and to say yes, and to do that thing that so many people are afraid to do, which is ask for the sale. Like, you literally asked for the sale when you're like, oh, you don't know if it's for sale even. Or you just like, oh, da, da, da. Oh, this is the thing. Oh. And you're just following these sparks of inspiration. And it's like one is happening right after the other. Like, you're getting in the drum circle, you're feeling good with the music. And the other thing that I love is that my sense of this story was that you were in a high level joy and having a good time state the whole time.
100%. Yeah, I was totally passion driven. I love the beach. And I said after 9/11, if I could live anywhere, where would I live? And I'm like, I want to live on a beautiful beach. I want to drink fresh coconut water. I want to eat fresh fish. I want to breathe clean air. And you know what? I don't really care about business right now. I just want to do something with a purpose that I love. And it was really love driven.
Yeah.
And then the next day I signed a contract. The guy fingerprinted his name because he didn't write. And I moved my big duffel bags, and there was a dilapidated room with no running water, almost like camping. And I moved in, and then I'm like, okay, now how do I get this place actually into a condition that I can bring? Back then, my focus was really on New Yorkers. So I'm like, how am I going to get a New York girl down to stay here? And I just started,
Yeah.
just took it up on me and went for it.
And one of the things when we talk about following the breadcrumbs, so a lot of entrepreneurs are like, oh, I want to have that passion. I want to have that excitement and be able to follow the breadcrumbs. But the thing is, it's kind of like wearing different colored glasses. Like, if you put on blue glasses, then the blue stuff looks a certain way. If you put on red glasses, the red stuff looks a certain way. The yellow stuff is a certain way. And so if you're in the place of, I'm grinding, I just need to make enough money to pay rent and cover the payroll, like, you're wearing a certain colored glasses and the only opportunities you see are in that vibe. But you are walking down the beach with rose colored glasses, let's just say, full of joy, full of love, full of all that
Full of hope,
excitement.
knowing that I was gonna find the place, like, I'll find it, it's coming up, I'm gonna find it.
And yeah, and so because you're wearing the right frequency colored glasses, you can see those opportunities and you're in that place that can make the opportunities that will actually lead to the joy and the passion and the excitement and all of that stuff happen. And that's a thing that most entrepreneurs don't get. Like, you have to roll with that frequency of what you want to create to actually see the opportunities that can get you to that place.
100%. I mean, 99% of the people probably would have never looked at that place because they were like, first of all, oh, there's these guys there working. Like, I'm not going to go up and say hi. And two, oh, it's a mess. I don't know anything about construction. I don't speak Spanish. I mean, there's a million reasons why to say no, but I didn't even like pay attention to them. I was just like, oh, like, wow, this place is amazing. The land feels great. I can envision this place all spruced up. And I thought, what I always ask myself this, what have I got to lose? I was living in a studio apartment, paying, I think it was $2,300 a month rent. And I'm like, all right, so if I pay $2,300 a month and I have this piece of property and I take my savings, worst case, I lose some money and I have an amazing experience. And I trust that it's a part of the breadcrumbs and it's going to lead me to something else. And actually, the business I do now is exactly what you're saying. It was like following the breadcrumbs of everything I've done in my life to the point that I started Amansala really came to fruition in this business. In Tokyo, I had a lunch delivery business. Imagine that, not speak, I speak Japanese, but not fluent, but enough to get by. But that country is not an easy country to start a business in and navigate, and even driving and the signage. And I
Right.
started a lunch delivery business back then, 23 years ago, to catering to all the investment bankers and all the foreigners who work there. And I put that together and I just went for it. Like one day I just said, I'm going to try that out and see what happens. But I really learned about food and I always like to make healthy food. So that came into play in this business. My travels in Southeast Asia about all the wellness and the spa and the meditation, and my mother's Tibetan Buddhist interest in learning with her and going with her on retreats, and just always loving architecture and design and reading through magazines when magazines were so important, and looking at beautiful places and clipping them and going, God, one day I want to go there. And this place, I love this roof. Or, wow, wouldn't that be a great setting for something? So it just sort of, all those breadcrumbs led me to making this beautiful place. So it's 100% right that you're not always there, but it's part of your trail to get there. And you just have to stay on it.
Yeah, and I think that's so important for the young listeners because so many young people, especially, are like, "Oh, I have to have it all figured out. I have to blah blah blah." So I can just say that there are no wrong turns. That everything you do, even if it's quote the not right thing, will give you some resource, will give you some benefit that will support you down the line, and you just don't have any idea how it can be. I can even look at some of my crazy, most traumatic experiences, how they played out to actually be the best thing that ever happened. And when we're in it and we're grinding or we're not feeling like we're on the path, you're on the path.
100%. It's like a relationship. Sometimes you break up with somebody and you're just like, oh, it's the worst thing that ever could have happened. And 2 years down the line, you're like, thank goodness that happened. Or not getting a job that you really wanted and getting another job. And then down the line, you're like, thank goodness I didn't get stuck in that job. And that's been my life for sure. After I got Amansala open, but it was a grind, but I didn't see it as a grind. But now I'm like, how did I do that? Like on a shoestring. I ran out of money. I didn't have money to keep going, and I would go to the ATM and take out my savings, and one day I went there and it was like insufficient funds. And I was managing this job site. I'd never done construction. I would call my doorman up to hang a picture. So I'm out of money, and this couple came to stay with me and they saw me kind of struggling. They were my first clients. And I said, I have a room, but it's kind of noisy and everything, but I could give you a room for $100 a night. I thought they were going to negotiate. They're like, yeah, that's good. And they said they saw me and the guy was really nice and like an angel. He's like, why don't I just pay you $1,000 and we'll work it out at the end? So with that $1,000, I'm like, okay, put the toilet in this room, put the door in this room, put the lights in this room. And then I rented another room. And then I would hitchhike to town every day. And this is back when, people didn't even carry laptops.
Right.
So I would rent a big clunky computer and I would use a telephone booth where you had to put coins in it behind a wooden, like a salon, like a saloon door.
Yeah.
Where I would put the coins in and I would call up like Vogue magazine and say, can I speak to the travel editor? How do you spell your name? Okay, thanks, bye. And then I would get off the phone and I'd go to the computer and I sent a pitch, like I'm writing to you from, and I made a program called Bikini Boot Camp. And it's a wellness program designed to rejuvenate from the inside out through a combination of yoga on the beautiful beach of Tulum. And all of a sudden, I would send that out and I would hitchhike to town with a truck each day that would pass down the bumpy road. And I'd rent the computer. And one day I opened it and there were like 50 messages in the inbox.
Wow.
And I was like, what? New York Magazine had written a story about it. It didn't even exist. They picked up my pitch and they wrote about it. And they don't do pictures, they do cartoon drawings. So
Right.
they have this amazing cartoon drawing of a woman in a Dior bikini climbing in like the jungle and said, trying to fit into that and want to look better in your Dior bikini before your holidays, go to bikini boot camp.
Nice.
And so then people started to write in and they said, I want to sign up. Now I was like, what do I do? I don't have a place yet. So I told them, unfortunately, we're totally full until October, but if you pay now, you can secure your spot. So
Nice.
the people started to pay. And then with that, I was able to do a door, a window, or whatever. And I finished my 4 initial rooms and I got my place finished. So, that was those were the early days.
And what's really important about this and the things to really take notice of is it's okay to be messy and it's gonna be messy. And if you're waiting till it's perfect, it's never gonna get done. So just keep leaping. And, we really freak out internally about like, oh my God, what are people gonna say if it's not perfect? It's not perfect. It's not perfect. Like, and also people don't care that much.
No, people don't notice. It's like, I'm sure, as women, sometimes we get dressed and we're like, oh, I didn't put the right necklace on. I really wanted to wear something different. Nobody notices.
Yeah.
Nobody notices at all. It's our inner voice. And you need to turn it off and be like, nobody notices. Nobody cares that much. You
And
know,
I think this is really important to hear is that the people that do notice are the ones that are never gonna be happy no matter how perfect it is.
Well, they're wearing those glasses where
Yeah,
they're looking for fault. So they're gonna walk around and no matter what you do, they're gonna find faults. And
yeah,
I've seen that with my customers. For sure, especially in the early days, there were a lot of things that people could find fault with, but the clientele that came, that resonated with the verbiage that I used of describing what it was, they loved it and they were like, wow, this is such an amazing experience. Now there's a lot of experiential travel,
yeah.
but really there wasn't. And I was one of the first ones and it was like a breath of fresh air. Like people who could go to, I always say like the Four Seasons of Maui, one of the beautiful property, but you don't leave there and say, wow, remember when it rained and we were all huddled in the cabana and then when the fisherman came up and he had that fish and or the fresh lobster came up and we all grilled it under the moonlight. You don't have those experiences
Yeah,
where everything's perfect. And a perfect life is a boring life. Who wants perfect? It's all the juicy part that makes it interesting.
absolutely. Okay, so you got everything up and running. It's now October, people are coming in, the business is working, and then you got this opportunity to get into another property?
Well, I used to lead the walks in the morning. So I had a bell and I'd ring a bell and be beach walk with Melissa. And down the beach, about 20 minutes, there were these abandoned, beautiful villas, like huge, like out of place because everybody built the palapa roofs, like the traditional wood from the jungle. But this was concrete and you didn't see any concrete down there back then. And I used to wander through these beautiful, huge structures and say to myself, wow, wouldn't these be amazing to renovate? Like they're almost there, like the built-in sofas and beds are still intact, but all the windows, it looked like the English Patient when a bomb had gone off inside a villa. But I was visualizing him redone and very curious about him. And I asked all the locals, like, what's the story about those villas? And everybody was like, no problemas, problemas, no, 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 no. Like basically, like, don't even go there.
Yeah.
And one day I went by there, went walking through it, and there was an old man with a broom. But when I say a broom, I mean like a few bristles tied together with a rope. And
Right.
he had some shoes that were like an old shoe sole with some tape. And his pants were held up literally by a little thin piece of burlap. And I asked him, like, what are you doing here? He said, mi trabajo. I said, well, who do you trabajo for? And he said, the banco. I said, oh, the bank. Well, what bank? And he's like, no sé. I said, well, when you get paid, if you come to Amansala, I give you 200 pesos. So about a week later, the old man came on his bike and he showed me his paycheck. And it wasn't from the bank, it was from the government. And it was a division of the government that would seize properties that were involved in illegal activities. So I called there, and everything in Mexico to that point had been so difficult. Like, to get a cell phone, you had to go wait in line for 2 hours, and then you'd get to the front of the line and they'd want, now they changed the rule, not 3 copies, but 4 copies of whatever. And then you have to, I mean, it was like everything was complicated. So I made this phone call and said, how do I get information about this property? They're like, oh, you can come down. I'm like, where? And they gave me an address. I hopped on one of those chicken buses, 2.5 hours or so from Tulum. And I went to their office, and they climbed up a ladder, and there was a big dusty packet of papers, and they brought them down. And they're like, yeah, well, we're looking for somebody to be the caretaker of the house until it goes to auction. And I'm like, well, when does it go to auction? He said, within a year. And I'm like, oh my God, yes. So I became the caretaker. Well, it was a really difficult situation because I didn't own it, but I had been promised when it goes to auction, I could have the first right to bid on it, and they'd give me preference. And so
Right.
they gave me the possession of these huge, amazing estates. And so I was like, okay, well, where am I going to start here? And I called in a guy I knew in construction, and he walked through, and he's like, oh, this is like 2 years and at least $1 million. I didn't have anything near that. And another guy called in. He's like, oh, this, I don't even know where to begin. Like, there's so much restructuring. So then I called in my little cement teams from the villages that
Right.
I'd been using to do work. And a guy came, and he brought like 10 of the people from his small town, and they strung up their hammocks, and they lived in the place. And we just tackled it room by room, exactly as I thought. I'm like, the structure sound, it was built like a barricade.
Yeah.
And we went through room by room and made this place into this beautiful, uh, like palatial villa, in a place where Tulum back then was like little huts, and I moved in there. So I was living in this mansion, and I marketed it, and I had a restaurant in there called Escobar's, and I called it Casa Magna. That was the name of the original house, the Pure House.
Uh-huh.
And I got it like out of the gate and running, and it was in all the magazines talking about this beautiful transformation of this place. And then, it was like my big fat Greek wedding, where like everything that could go wrong was going wrong. And all of a sudden, I was confronted by somebody who said he represented the actual owner, and that they wanted me out of the property. And it became this real estate dispute, and in a very Mexican fashion. And I basically was kicked out when I'd put all this love and money and
Right.
time into the place, and I'd finally finished it. And it had been about, I don't know, a year and a half of just work and getting it to the point where it was. Like, literally, I just buried the speakers, at my Bose speakers, under the sand. And it was like the day later that suddenly this came out of the woodwork. And I was kicked out by force in a land dispute, and like the Wild West. And I had my son, who was very young. He was like under a year, and I had him in a carrier. And I remember passing him to a housekeeper and saying, take Dylan and get out. And I tried to stay there and protect the place, but I was like outsmarted, and it was all like a done deal. And I had to decide at that point, like, what do I do? Like, has my time in Mexico come to an end? Or do I stay there and fight? Like, what do I do? And I didn't really miss a beat. I was like, I love what I do. I'm good at what I do. I've learned the ropes here, and I'm not going to let this one thing determine my destiny. And I literally took my sign. I had my guys come, and we with a drill, and we took off the sign and marched it down the beach to my other property. And I took a moment to breathe. And there was another property down the beach that I had started to purchase in payments, because I thought, one day, what if my lease is up and they don't want to rent it again? And
Right.
it seemed like so much money, but I paid it, and I paid it, and I paid it. And I thought, I'm just going to rebuild down here, because I've got the clients, I've got the staff, I've got the market, and I'm not going to let that one thing determine my future. And it was a really big moment because a lot of people would have said, you know what, this is a sign. It's time
Right.
to go home. But I didn't have the glasses on that were looking for a negative sign. I had the glasses on with the positive sign. And I'm like, you know what? This is an opportunity to build from the ground up for my needs. I host a ton of retreats and I'm a wellness hotel. And I knew more about what my clients needed as far as rooming and yoga shalas and massage rooms. And I thought, I'm going to build it right from the ground up and in a better location that's not all the way down the bumpy road of Tulum, far at the end inside of the city. And so I did. I rebuilt from the ground up to
Yeah.
the place where I'm currently based now. So the Amansala of today is in the location that happened after that. And when I look at it now, I'm like, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have completed the payment probably on this other project property. I would have been way down the beach where I was limited in how many rooms I had because it was sprawling, but there was
Right.
just a lot of concrete, but it wasn't individual rooms. And and the neighbors, there's a lot of noise down there. And so it worked out that I wound up in like the best location on the beach where I have quiet neighbors on both sides. It's easy, it's accessible, it's designed well, and it's just perfect for my needs.
Perfect. One of the things that I think a lot of entrepreneurs go through this, especially the ones who are successful and happy, is they will lose everything or something akin to everything one, two, sometimes even three times before they get that right click that gives them the happiness and the fulfillment and the success. And one of the things I always like to think of is if this is being pulled away, it must be making room for something better.
Yes, totally. It's this or something better. And I firmly believe that in every aspect of our lives, whether it's a job, a relationship, a business. And as an entrepreneur, it's very rare. The first thing that you try to do is your success story, but
Very true.
it's the breadcrumbs. And a real entrepreneur doesn't give up when the first thing doesn't work. They tweak it or they're inspired or they're like, oh, this is like similar, but it's different. And I need to change my business model or change my thought process or do it better this way. But if you don't have those failures, then you don't really know. Like if my sandwich business would have been a little bit better in Tokyo,
Right.
maybe I'd be there in the sandwich business and I wouldn't really be living my true love of being on the beach and being in the fresh air. And I'd be trapped in the city. So, you just don't know. Or maybe I would have made a website and I'd be sitting there, managing a thing that's really behind a desk all the time. So everything that I did, even if it wasn't a success, it gave me knowledge and
Yep.
it kept me moving forward.
Yep. And we take that, like, in our culture, we think about money, 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 things, tangible things, but we don't realize that what we gain, it's like that knowledge, that understanding, that truth within ourselves, that faith within ourselves. Nobody can take that away from you. You can lose your business 20 times over, your house, this, that, but nobody can take what you learn and what you carry and your experience from you.
100%. It's 100% yours. And that's your IP.
Yep.
That's what makes you you. I always say if somebody dropped me out of in a parachute in the middle of anywhere in the world and I landed, it's just in my DNA. I would look with those rose-colored glasses and I would be like, all right, let me assess the situation. I'd get right up and I would thrive because I take me with me.
Yes, exactly. So tell us a little bit about what you have to offer going on at your business.
And
And
Amansala.
yeah,
Amansala means peaceful water in Sanskrit.
that was going to be my next question.
And I wasn't going to name it Amansala, but I had a little trading company because of my travels. I would pick up all these beautiful things. And I thought, during the .com bust, I'm like, not bust, the .com boom, everybody was making a website. And I wanted to make a website where I would sell these beautiful things for your mind, for your home, body, and spirit. So I had a home section with beautiful handmade curtain panels from India or Buddhist statues made by the Tibetan monks. And so I had this little company called Amansala for it because it also means peaceful place. So
Oh,
like create a peaceful place for yourself. And so I got down to Mexico and they needed a name for the contract. And I thought, well, I guess I already have a bank account and I already have some checks and a business card. So I'll just call it that and then I'll think of the name for the hotel. But then everybody started calling it Amansala, Amansala. And all of a sudden I was like, it's Amansala. And and so, it's Amansala, but what we offer at Amansala is an experience. It's a vacation with a purpose. It's somewhere where you can go by yourself or with someone you want to share a holiday with, but it's really designed about rejuvenating yourself from the inside out. It's about taking time out from your busy life to reassess where you are, to be on the beach, to swim in the ocean, to get massages, to do yoga, to do some movement, to check in with your body, to check in with your whole being. It's kind of like you go to the dentist for a checkup, but what do you do for your whole being? I think it's an essential part of well being to take yourself for a mind, body, spirit tune up or checkup. And that's what we provide there. And it's located right on the water. We do excursions to explore beautiful swimming holes, the Mayan ruins. The food is wholesome and fresh, chemical free. The vibe is very much like staying at somebody's home. And the people that go there, it's kind of like the onion layer is peeled off, and you just get to the essence of all these beautiful beings. So it's very communal. A lot of people make new friends. I don't like to say network like network for business, but network for life. Have people to go visit, have people that, you can share, get opinions from. And it's a really great place to go to alone. And a lot of people are afraid to travel alone,
yeah.
and especially as a woman, but it's a safe place to go alone. And when you go alone, you don't need to play your old story back over and over with somebody who knows your past story. You can show up exactly who you are or who you want to be in a new light. So there's something really liberating about just being there and being whoever you want to present yourself as at that moment without talking about your ex or remember when this happened or
Yeah.
whatever it might be we tend to do. So yeah, so it's just for me the ideal vacation, and that's how I created it. And we do programs there. One is called Restore and Renew, and the other one is called Bikini Boot Camp. And they're both programs where you pay one price and they're all inclusive, and they include your a typical day would start with meditation, like 10-15 minutes, and then a stretch on the beach, a beach walk, come back, have a green juice or a coconut water, and then go into a vinyasa flow class, come down for breakfast, take a little break. And then some days there might be a cardio, like a circuit class. Other days we might go on an excursion and go snorkeling or kayaking, come back for lunch, chill out by the beach, get a massage, maybe have an afternoon Pilates class, a stretch restorative kind of yoga, dinner. And then maybe there might be drumming under the stars or a walk to look for turtles or a movie. And that's kind of the flow of the stay.
I love it. I love it. So you can be found, all your information will be in the show notes, but what's the website?
It's amansala.com. And that's just like it sounds. Aman, AMAN, and then Sala, SALA.com. We're also on Instagram at Amansala Tulum.
Perfect.
And we also host retreats. So it's not only about yoga retreats, but if somebody is doing masterminds or relationship coaching or parenting or not quit smoking or whatever it might be, we're experts in hosting retreats. And we provide the backdrop and the food and the rooms and the support for teachers to come and do what they love.
Love it.
So there's a lot of people probably listening who have something to share, and there's other people who could learn from them. So if you're interested in hosting a retreat, we have that element as well.
Beautiful. Allowing people to become more and more who they are, which is what Be the Wolf is all about. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your time, and your energy. And
Thank you so much for having me. I love what you're doing. I love the platform you're providing women and people in general to share their stories. And I hope that everybody keeps doing what they love to do and thrives.
absolutely. And remember, everybody, when you unleash the power of you, humanity evolves. We'll see you all next time on Be the Wolf. Bye, everyone.
Bye.